What's up guys, Marcus here. I am taking a break from YouTube today and my wife is going to take over this upload and show you guys how to do Backsplash the easiest way possible.
Marcus is no longer in charge around here. So the first step in completing this project is obviously choosing whatever tile you want for your backsplash. These are always really fun trips for the kids because they love running through the big stores. Marcus, not so much because I take a while to make some design choices. For our backsplash, we were wanting to go with something that was really simple and clean and more importantly, easy to install. So we decided to go with a 3x12 white subway tile. The next choice we had to make was how we were going to be installing these tiles on the wall. For this time around, we decided to go with muscle bound adhesive mat. The main reason we decided to go with that was because we were needing to install the tile and grout it all on the same day. That's just one of the benefits that you get with this product. After we made those two decisions, I started gathering up the rest of my supplies. I grabbed things like tile spacers, a measuring tape, of course, a Sharpie, just so that I could mark where my tiles needed to be cut. And then I used a snap cutter and also a wet saw. I started the project with checking to see how level my countertops were. Luckily for me, they were really level, so I didn't have to worry about that. I was also using a tile trim piece on the end of my tile. So I went ahead and got that in place and ready to go. And then I went to measure the center of my wall. I'll be doing a 50% offset pattern with this tile. So this just helps me to make sure that I've got even tiles on both ends of my wall. And it gives me a starting point for all of my rows of tile. Once I found the center point of my wall, I pulled out the laser level, and this was just to make sure that all of my tiles on the first row would be perfectly level with each other. And then I also dry fit those tiles, again, just to make sure I measured everything correctly and it was all gonna come out the way it was planned. So once I knew that all my tiles were gonna fit perfectly, I decided to go ahead and install the muscle bound onto the wall. I did clean the surface first because they recommend doing that in order for it to stick better. And then I used a razor blade to cut out any outlets or light switches that I needed. This was a really quick and easy process, and I just continued doing that all the way down the wall. I did have to recruit Marcus for this back corner because I am currently pregnant with our third child, and the belly was just getting in the way.
Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Did you just drop a bomb on us and tell us you're having a third kid in a random Backsplash video? That's exactly right. We did do that.
I used a grout float to make sure all of my muscle bound was secured properly, and then it was time to start laying my tile. And I started in the center, right where I marked my center point at. You can see here that when I started my second row, I also started right from the center, and I just marked the middle of the tile and lined it up with the center of the bottom row. One thing I love about these subway tiles is they're super easy to install because they're super easy to cut. So any of the straight cuts that I needed to make, I would just mark my tile exactly where it needed to be cut. And then I take it over to my snap cutter and I would just score a line and then snap it with the tool. These always provide a really clean cut for me, and I think it's way easier than having to run tile to a tile saw. This is about halfway through this wall, and even though I have a pretty good amount left to do, feels like I'm starting to make a little bit of progress. Of course, you're gonna run into situations where you have to make a more intricate cut, and for those, I just mark my lines and then I take it out to the wet saw and cut those out. My tile saw always tends to give more of a rough cut on these tiles, and they just don't look as good, so I'll usually grab a file and just file those edges down to give them more of a smooth look. Once the majority of the wall was done, all I had left to do was fill in these small areas around the window. We are done with this side. Obviously I have to do all of that, but I'm gonna go ahead and grout this today to get it ready for the plumber, for him to come in tomorrow to install the sink and the faucet. So yeah, before I do that, I'm gonna go ahead and glue tape right up against this edge here to make sure I don't get any grout on my butcher block. So for all my backsplashes, I tend to go with an unsanded grout. They're just a lot easier to work with in my opinion as far as getting into these small grout joints. And some people will say that there's like a method to how you grout, but really I always just slap it on the wall and it's always worked out for me. So after about 10 minutes, you'll get a wet sponge and wipe any of the excess off. I do try to pay really close attention to all of my grout joints and just make sure that they all look even. Otherwise, they will kind of come out looking a little bit wonky and you definitely don't want that. Once I started tiling the second wall, I really wanted to make sure that I continued my 50% offset all the way around the corner. And so I just made sure that my measurements were right and I laid those tiles so that everything looked really seamless. This wall was 10 times easier to do because I didn't have a window that I had to cut around and I only had the 2 outlets. So I was really thankful for that because this one went by quick. And here we are laying the very last tile. Alrighty, so all grouting is done. I finished that yesterday, and now that the tile is, or the grout is dry, I've got to go in and buff my tiles so that I can get all the grout haze off and they'll look nice and pretty and shiny. And then after that, we can get outlet covers back on, everything caulked and ready to go. Once I made sure all my tiles were clean of the grout haze, I went back and started to caulk all of my seams and anywhere that the tile would meet another surface. So that would be in the corner, obviously, and then against the countertop. I also caulked around the window and then the cabinets and anywhere that the tile met a portion of the wall. So all my hard work is done. Are y'all ready to see the final backsplash?
Thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section down below and I'll have my wife answer them because it's not my responsibility. If you watched this video and thought to yourself, man, that was so good, how can I give this guy money to repay him? Then you're in luck. I have a lot of stuff listed on my Etsy store that you can buy to support the channel, so head on over to reformationwoodshop.etsy.com to grab something.